A particularly troubling specificity has never ceased to intrigue me each time I had the chance to direct Monteverdi's Orfeo. The fact that two completely divergent endings have been transmitted to us from the last act of the opera. From a first version, Dionysian or Bacchic, we only know the text printed in Mantua in 1607, the year of the work's creation, while from a second version, Apollonian, we have both the text and the music that were preserved in the two Venetian editions of the opera from 1609 and 1615. In the first finale, enraged Bacchantes appear on stage. They have heard Orpheus curse all the women of the world, because they are impure compared to his Eurydice, lost forever. The Bacchantes swear to punish the singer with a gruesome death. In the second finale, Apollo, the god of music, descends from the sky to save his son. Reading one after the other, the two texts seem to follow each other, the Apollonian happy ending correcting the Dionysian tragic ending in accordance with the antagonism of the two poles of Orpheus's character, the rational one linked to his father Apollo, and the irrational one linked to Dionysus Bacchus. Since these two competing deities are actually half-brothers, their common father being Jupiter, they merge in Orpheus's heart, and it is the passionate equals Dionysian side of his character that will force him to commit the original sin, threatening every artist. Hubris, a Greek word untranslatable with a single French word, pride, vanity, but also excess, immoderation, setting oneself above the gods. This sin, this hubris, is notably the theme of the two great moralizing choruses at the end of the third and fourth acts, numbers 37 and 45, in style antico, without which one cannot understand the message of Monteverdi's masterpiece, which belongs to a transgenre between opera and sacred representation. Dionysus, the androgynous god of vegetation, wine, drunkenness, and uncontrolled emotions, stands at the opposite end from Apollo, the masculine god of beauty, order, and clarity, thus of music, assimilated by the Romans with Helios in Latin, Sol, the sun god. Apollo is invoked by his son Orpheus in the first act of the opera as rose of the sky, life of the world, and worthy descendant of the one who governs the universe equals Jupiter, sun, you who encompass everything and see everything. If the Apollonian sun illuminates the first act, the shadow of Dionysus darkens the second. One of the primary attributes of this god was the serpent. Since Eurydice is bitten by a serpent, as we learn from the messenger, one wonders if Dionysus himself is not responsible for her death, jealous of the love Orpheus feels for his father Apollo, of his ability to tame the wildest beasts and men, with magical songs inspired by his father, the musician of the gods, adored and venerated for having delivered humanity from the Delphian python, a gigantic serpent. After 4 productions of Orfeo with 4 extraordinary directors, Herbert Wernicke, Luca Ronconi, Tricia Brown, and Barry Kosky, I felt more than ever the need to try to resurrect, as far as possible, the lost music of the Dionysian finale of Orfeo, using the method common in the Baroque era, of arranging an existing vocal piece by adapting it to a new text, and to confront the result with the Apollonian finale composed by Monteverdi. Thanks to the succession of the two finales, the Dionysian one becomes a simple episode between the beginning of the fifth act, Orpheus's return to Thrace, and the true Apollonian finale that concludes the opera. The restored music comes from Monteverdi himself, his brother Giulio Cesare Monteverdi, and Marco da Gagliano, the composer of the opera Daphne, created in Mantua 1 year after Orfeo, and of almost equal importance in the history of opera as the latter. The scene of the Bacchantes follows the violent diatribe of Orpheus against all women other than Eurydice, proud, treacherous, fickle, lacking in judgment, despicable, guilty and short of existing, where Eurydice is definitively no longer on earth. A bizarre procession arrives on stage consisting of Bacchantes, to which satyrs have joined. At the first performance in Mantua, the audience, exclusively male, highly literate and highly cultured, could certainly immediately imagine the frightening priestesses of Bacchus Dionysus, also called Maenads, enraged women, with which the god of wine, not present on stage, surrounds himself to overturn the masculine order of the Greek world and pursue with implacable vengeance all those who, like Orpheus, refuse to recognize his divinity. As soon as he heard the piercing cries of the Bacchantes, Eva, and the beatings of their tambourines and castanets. As soon as he saw their voluptuous dances to the sound of the flute, their thirsty sticks garlanded with vine leaves and ivy, and their tunics made of fawn skin, the audience of the first performance must have understood that Strigio suggested much more than he showed. Orgies on stage, unappetizing details like Bacchantes chasing goats over hills and dales to bleed them and devour their raw flesh were admitted in painting and in translations of ancient texts, but not in theater. What we will hear in our reconstruction of the lost music is a hymn to Bacchus slightly abridged in 3 stanzas to music borrowed from Gagliano, 6th Book of Madrigals, 1617. Another hymn to Bacchus on a text very similar to that of Strigio, with wild ritornellos by Giulio Cesare Monteverdi published in the Scherzi Musicali a Tre Voci by his brother in 1607. Solo episodes are inserted between the stanzas in a florid recitative style, of which models can be found in some compositions by Monteverdi himself already mentioned, the Ballo dell'Ingrate from 1608, the Madrigal Tempro la Cetra from the 7th Book of Madrigals, 1619, and the Madrigal Volgendo il Ciel, from the 8th Book, 1638. From the text by Strigio, we learn that the Bacchantes are searching for Orpheus to punish him, but they cannot find him. We already know why. After hearing the first hysterical cries of the Maenads, Orpheus immediately retreated at the ignoble sight of the procession of women in love with drunkenness. The Moresca printed in the 2 Venetian editions at the conclusion of the Apollonian finale is certainly better placed here, at the conclusion of the Dionysian finale, as musicologists have unanimously suspected since they began studying Orfeo. The Moresca was a primitive dance with grotesque gestures, symbolizing death, followed by resurrection. If the Apollonian finale follows a tumultuous and lascivious bacchanal, although somewhat euphemized by Strigio, Apollo does not just come as a deus ex machina to calm the fury and madness of his son. He comes to save his son's life, or perhaps even more, if we see in the Moresca a symbolic representation of Orpheus's atrocious death. He comes to resurrect him as the healer, the name under which he was adored and venerated in antiquity. Here, the opera definitively becomes a sacra representation with a Christian subtext. Since the beginnings of Christianity, Orpheus has been considered a prefiguration of Jesus. While Orpheus is punished by hell for having despised the law of Pluto, Christ, as a new Orpheus corrected, conquers hell. Apollo was seen as the prefiguration of God, Eurydice as the symbol of celestial, platonic love, the antipode of earthly love, and the final chorus of Orfeo ends with a paraphrase of Psalm 126. Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy, and not with an out-of-place Moresca.